Welcome to Here's the Thing. My name is Vince Negro, and with us on today's program is Christina Crook. Christina, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
I know you're an author and a speaker and all that kind of stuff, and we're going to get to that. Tell us who you were in high school. Tell us a little bit about who you were in high school.
That's a good question. I was a jock.
You were a jock?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was a jock. I played every sport. Basketball was my number one sport, but I also played soccer and volleyball. I even had a little bit of a fierce edge on the badminton court.
Okay.
I was very social.
Competitive? Were you competitive?
Very competitive.
Yeah.
But I think I was also pretty sportsmanlike. I was kind of, and a chatterbox. I watch my kids play soccer now, and whenever it's quiet out there, I'm like, come on guys, start yelling. Yeah, it was a very social, active high schooler.
And you grew up where, out west?
Out west. I grew up in the Greater Vancouver area.
Greater Vancouver area?
Yeah.
And you were there till university, high school?
I did my university there at Simon Fraser.
Simon Fraser.
And then moved out here after I was married and already had one child. So about 8 years ago now.
So you moved east? You started to move east. And did you come specifically to Toronto or?
To Toronto, yeah. So my husband he was already working for a company that's based in Toronto.
Okay.
And so we'd done an exchange for 3 months to kind of test the waters here in the city. And we did that in the middle of winter, which was not ideal in terms of getting the best taste of Toronto. But it became clear that that was going to be a good move for us, for my husband's work, and also for us to explore a new city. Toronto is, well, I mean, as you know, has a lot to offer, and so we were kind of up for an adventure, and it's been a good adventure.
I've been to Vancouver many times, and it's a beautiful city. It's a whole different dynamics out there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss Vancouver? Are you getting used to Toronto?
It's equal love now.
Oh, equal love.
Equal love. I mean, all of my family is there, and aesthetically, I think Vancouver wins out for beauty, hands down. But Toronto is a city of neighborhoods, and we did not expect to discover that here. When the spring thaw happens and everyone's out and the city explodes into color, like that doesn't happen in Vancouver because it's kind of a similar climate year round. And so when I try to describe to family back home, like Toronto in spring, like there's nothing like it. They're just like, they don't understand. But that's one of the things we love about Toronto. And we live in the Junction neighborhood and have a really tight community there. So.
Yeah, and that Junction area has really developed in the last 10 years. It's really come a long way.
Yeah.
So you come to Toronto, you're here in Toronto, and you start to write here, you start to, how did you get involved in the things you're doing today?
Mm-hmm. So like I mentioned, I went to Simon Fraser University and there I studied communication. And it was a very impractical degree, which was really a critical analysis of mass communication and the way that mass communication forms cultures and people. So that was my background, and from there I went to work for the CBC in Vancouver. And from there I went freelance. And so when I moved from Vancouver to Toronto, I was already freelance writing and had already started to pay attention to the ways that email at that time, and then social media was beginning to encroach on my personal life, but also on the lives of the people around me. And so I started a practice that my grandma had done, which was she was a newspaper clipper. So we have newspapers here. My grandmother, whenever I went to visit her, she would have a stack of clippings for me. And I started to clip articles and print them off from the internet about the ways that email and social media were beginning to sort of shift our relationships with one another, productivity, creativity, these different things. And so I had this growing curiosity about who I'd be without the internet. And so that led me to take a 31-day fast from the internet. So I went completely offline for 31 days.
It's almost like the Lent of going off of...
A little bit like Lent.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually a January 1st start. But for 31 days, I was completely offline, and I actually used an older technology. I used a typewriter to write a letter each day to the same friend in Vancouver, and had this sort of dialogue between friends. And I was taking those clippings that I had amassed and starting to explore these questions of what it means to be human in a digital age. What kind of creative could I be without the demands of the internet? Was I a more present neighbor and wife and parent and friend without the internet? And so that led me to write a number of essays, and then eventually my publisher reached out to explore that more fully in a book.
So you went off the internet for 30 days, and was it difficult in the early stages? Was it something like, that you needed to, how was that, how did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, you could classically define it as a detox, right? I mean, I had been using...
Did you feel better, like halfway into it?
Oh man, hands down. Hands down. I felt like my head was absolutely clear. I could think straight. I had so much more time in the day to read and create and do things that I always complained that I had no time for. What I didn't realize was all those little 5-minute, 10-minute check-ins on my phone actually equaled a huge amount of time.
It's interesting, just to go back to the clippings of your grandmother, I find myself doing that as well. Like, I still like to physically feel a newspaper and read it, and I actually, if there are topics or things that I like, I actually still clip them out and I keep them. And it's just a habit, but it actually feels better because you can reference it back as opposed to just going to the internet and having that that whole kind of complaint. So as you went into this thing, you started writing a little bit. You're the founder of JOMO, the author of The Joy of Missing Out: Finding Balance in a Weird World.
In a wired world.
In a wired world. Was that something that obviously progressed from your cleansing and that kind of stuff there? Because, just the title alone, and I want you to tell me a little bit about it, is that, people talk about that this is hell on earth, and that we still haven't experienced a cleansing or a new era or a mindset which you can get through meditation or other forms of that you may kind of get your body down to it. Is your organization something along the lines of teaching how to relax?
I want to revisit the thing about hell on earth. What do you mean?
Well, people have said, towards my readings, like people say, is there a heaven? Is there a heaven? Is there heaven and earth, right?
Yeah.
And people say, no, we're living, hell on earth is here. Like, there's going to be a better place you're going to go to.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.